Biden's decision to slap tariffs on Chinese goods because he was, in your words, quote, standing up for American workers, unquote. So specifically on China, can you detail what exactly you would be doing differently than President Trump?
Well, let's keep in mind, tariffs can be an important tool in the toolbox when used in targeted ways. But right now what we've got is chaos and corruption. Donald Trump has imposed a tariff on everyone, everywhere, on all products. That's the 10% tariff. Of course, it was much higher earlier in the week. And now in this trade war with China that basically tries to shut down all trade. And then, right out in plain view, as if the chaos weren't enough, he adds a nice layer of corruption for everyone to see, and that is a special deal for his CEO donor, and that is an exception to the China deal for iPhones. Look, here's the problem. You can't get an economy strong and moving forward when it's loaded with chaos and corruption. Investors will not invest in the United States when Donald Trump is playing red light, green light with tariffs and saying, oh, and for my special donors, you get a special exception. People make investment decisions that are years into the future. If they're going to build a factory or they're going to rehab an old factory or buy a bunch of new tools. And right now with Donald Trump, nobody can figure out what the rules will be 5 days from now, much less 5 years from now. That's a real hit to our economy and to developing more manufacturing here in the United States.
So on Wednesday, the president announced a pause on most of the tariffs, a 90-day pause, except for the ones on China and except for the 10% across the board. You called for the SEC to investigate whether President Trump intentionally manipulated the market or covered for insider trading when he told Americans on Truth Social and in the Oval Office that they should go invest in the stock market before he announced that pause on the tariffs, and the market soared afterwards. Have you seen any actual evidence that insider trading was going on instead of the just general advice he gave for people to invest?
Well, there are people who have looked at what happened to purchases and to calls just before he made that announcement that caused the stock market to skyrocket. But let me be clear with the back and forth here. That's what investigations are for. And it's entirely appropriate to have an investigation to make sure that Donald Trump, Donald Trump's family, Donald Trump's inner circle didn't get advance information and trade on that information. This is just, this is how the stock market works in order to make sure on a consistent basis that nobody's trading on inside information. And by the way, Jake, the same thing should apply to Congress. And that is, we should have a rule that no one in Congress can trade in any individual stocks. No senator, no representative. I've had that bill for a long time. It's got a lot of support. In fact, it's got some bipartisan support. I think now would be a good time to get it across the finish line and get our representatives out of the business of trading in individual stocks. The American people should never have to wonder when the president, when his cabinet, when members of Congress are making a decision, whether it's for the good of the country or for the good of their own bank account.
Let me ask you a larger philosophical question, because the Democratic Party, obviously not in a great place right now. Democrats seem divided on whether to try to allow room for the belief that tariffs, as you say, targeted tariffs can be a good thing, or whether to reject all of Trump's tariffs outright. We saw this play out with Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer making headlines when she visited the White House. She praised tariffs as a useful tool. Take a listen.
I understand the motivation behind the tariffs. And I can tell you, here's where President Trump and I do agree. We do need to make more stuff in America. More cars and chips. More steel and ships. We do need fair trade.
Is there room for that kind of nuanced discussion right now, or do you think what she said was a mistake?
I want to put it slightly differently, and that is, it is a mistake to have the President of the United States out there just playing red light, green light, and saying, oh, this morning I woke up and think the tariffs should be this big. Now I think they should be this big. Now I think they should be somewhere else. And I got to say, saying, well, I will continue to make those decisions and I'm going to hold off on these tariffs for 90 days. That doesn't put the economy in a better place. That doesn't put investors in a better place. Congress has a job right now, and that is to step up and take this authority away from Donald Trump. He has proven how he will use it, but remember, the statute that he's now using starts with a declaration of emergency. And in that same statute, Congress has the responsibility to decide, is it really an emergency or not? Are we really in an emergency with Belgium right now? Are we really in an emergency with South Korea? Congress can say, no, there's no emergency. It's a resolution. And if we do that, it takes Donald Trump back to the trade as we had it before. And tariffs are then decided with Congress having an important say in it. And that's an important signal to the rest of the world. Right now, it's a no curbs on Donald Trump, and that means chaos and corruption. We have an opportunity in Congress to vote that down and to say, no, we are going to use tariffs in a far more targeted way. We're sure not headed in the direction he wants to go. All of the Democrats are ready to support that, but we got to get the Republicans, or at least some of the Republicans, on board to make that happen. They've got to decide, is their job just to suck up to Donald Trump, or is their job to stand up for the American people?
JP Morgan says the odds of a recession are now 50-50. Goldman Sachs puts the odds at 45%. You were one of the loudest voices warning about the 2008 financial crisis. What do you think the likelihood of a recession is right now?
Well, it's the economists, it's Wall Street are all telling us there's a problem, and the warning lights are flashing red. You know, though, Jake, the part I remember from 2008 is what a recession means. Family by family, small business by small business. You know, I watched back in 2008 when 10 million people lost their homes, when millions of people lost their jobs, when millions of people saw their savings wiped out. I also watched when little tiny businesses got turned upside down and never had a chance to recover. Recessions are something that people like to talk about. They talk about the stock market, they talk about the big numbers that move. But the reality is they are experienced one family, one small business at a time, and they are hard to recover from. So I am worried that the continued chaos, the continued corruption, the fact that Donald Trump is just out there shooting wildly is pushing our economy in the wrong direction, and the people who are going to feel it most are not the wealthy traders. It's going to be the families and the small businesses who get wiped out.
So given all the chaos, given the fact that the president's approval ratings are declining, given all the uncertainty in the market, why do you think the Democratic Party has such a low approval rating? I would think this would be an opportunity for Democrats to rise and present an alternative, but it doesn't seem like that's happening. And as you know, your party's approval ratings are historically low.
You know, look, the way I look at this is that Donald Trump has created a lot of chaos in his first 3 months in Washington. Remember, he started out, made the promise that on day one, he would lower prices for American families. Those were his words, on day one. By the time he gets 2 months in and he's told that his tariff plans will increase costs, his answer was he couldn't care less. I think that the Democrats have really coalesced around the central message. Our job is to fight to lower those costs for American families. Our job is to fight against a Republican Party that not only doesn't care about those families, but is working hard right now while all this chaos is going on to give more tax cuts to billionaires and billionaire corporations and to cut access to Social Security, to cut veterans services, to cut health care for little babies and for seniors in nursing homes, to cut help for our public schools so that class sizes get bigger, so that little kids with special needs can't get an aid, so that after-school programs are canceled. Look, I think our secret super-duper strategy is just tell the truth about what's going on. The American people will see pretty clearly who's fighting for the billionaires and who's fighting for them.
Senator Elizabeth Warren from the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.